let's launch. Thor, thank you so much for saying yes to this conversation. I am very much looking forward to having it.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. So let's get started with how you are a dad. How many children do you have?
I have 5 children.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go down the ages, oldest to youngest.
Well, they are from 20. The ages might be approximate, plus minus 1 year. When you're this many, you can't keep better track. They're like 28 down to 17. That's pretty much the age range,
28 to 17.
At this point, yeah. So they're sort of almost about to leave the house.
Wow, 28. 28 seems like pretty old. You look really young.
I'm 50 again. I'm 56.
Oh, okay.
So that explains the age thing. So
yeah, you look good. You look good at 56.
Thank you.
28 to 17. So there's obviously boys and girls in there. And so let's go to a good question. Like, what's your philosophy? How do you when it comes to parenting? What guides your decision making?
That's a very good question. I think the most honest answer I can give is it's just my intuition. What seems right to me. There really isn't anything else you can base it on. Obviously, I was raised by great parents, so I look towards them. That's a great starting point. And then you sort of, as you become a parent yourself, you realize that there's a couple of things you want to change, and you sort of just model that. I try not to let other parents dictate my parenting. If I think something is right, truly good for my kids, I will try to stick with that and not let other parents sort of shame me into, well, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. So that's the quick answer to that,
Has that happened to you much? Only because it's never happened to me. Like, no, I don't think anyone has ever, except that except the one time I had to take both my boys. They were little. They were like, I don't know, 7, 8. There was a reason why, I forget why, either their school was closed or something, and I had to take them to work. And at the time I worked in Manhattan, and now we're in the subway, commuting to the office. They were going to go with me to spend the whole day at the office.
Yeah.
And we're on the platform, and I know my kids, and I know what their limits are, right? And so, but they got close to the edge, and because they were looking at a rat, on the track, and a random lady, she came to me and she said something, and I was really annoyed. I was like, lady, back off. I got this. Right. But really, I think that's the only time that I remember anyone, butting in. So, do you find yourself, being,
I've had a couple of experiences like that, because I used to live in the city, New York, and we used to let our kids run, around in the playground. And I remember this one instance where an old lady would literally just beat her cane against the gate, saying you're reckless letting them go down the slide. There are rubber floors on these playgrounds.
Yes.
And I go, there's no way to play unless you get some speed down the slide. So it's it's other people are eager to voice their opinions.
so you're talking about strangers, not like other family members.
Well,
friends.
I'm talking about strangers. There are instances. There are instances like, I'm from Iceland, and my ex-wife, she was American.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought when my kids were growing up that I would speak Icelandic to them.
Yeah.
And my wife would speak English. But since I was the one working and not spending so much time with them, it was very slow. But I was going to stick with it. So after about 2.5 years, I saw my mom. And with my oldest daughter. She wasn't speaking at the time. So we go to Iceland, visit my mom, and my mom sort of whispers to me, she's not speaking very fast at all. And I go, And quietly, I'm like, bug off, mom. But
Yeah.
but it sits and it goes like, I can't be shamed into my kids speaking slower than other kids. So I stopped speaking to her in Icelandic.
Yes.
And that was a major mistake. I've been, I'm still today, I'm being reminded of what a mistake that was by my kids. Anyway, I find out later by talking to bilingual parents in New York, everybody knows that bilingual kids speak a lot slower. They're learning two languages. It takes them a year to listen. So these are the kind of things where you really, if somebody's just saying things just to sort of nag you and shame, you really should check it out before you listen to it. That's, that's sort of my philosophy.
Yeah. I think I know where you're going with this. On the one hand, there's so many variables that a new parent has to deal with, so many unknowns. On the other hand, when somebody shows up and they appear to be experts, then we take the fact that we really don't know everything, and there's so much that we don't know, and we might put it against what they're saying and feel uncomfortable, like maybe they're right.
Yes, it's but there are, it's good to sort of arm yourself with an arsenal of arguments when you
Yes.
best argument against somebody that's saying that is like circumcision. It's completely accepted in some cultures and completely frowned upon in others. And it's like there are legitimate debates about it. Has its pros apart from the religious ones, and has its cons. So it's an obvious thing where you go like, well, people just arbitrarily decide whatever they think is best. So I'm gonna do that with my kids.
Yeah. So I think that a good point here, something that you said, was arming yourself with arguments. Yeah, absolutely. I think that to protect ourselves, right? Because it hurts. It's uncomfortable when somebody comes in and they appear to be experts, and then we feel we didn't have the right answer. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I definitely had plenty of comebacks, in my arsenal after because, but here's why. Because my philosophy on parenting is, what's the most that I can teach my kids? What the fastest that I can get them, up and running in this world that already exists and is going at 1,000 miles an hour without them, right? That was my philosophy. Was, what can I teach them? What can I expose them to? How can I do it in a way that they're going to have fun doing it, love the experience with me, but it's going to be very very outside of, very fringe, right? Very, very outside of what most people are doing. Because I remember seeing a lot of parents with children, with little ones, being very cautious, right? Including my wife. My wife is somebody that if I listened to her, my kids would have never done 90% of the amazing things that I think. So once you're like me in that regard, you have to be ready for a lot of people to say a lot of things.
Yeah, it's especially like nowadays with overparenting, helicopter parenting, all this stuff. It's like it's hard to argue with somebody that goes, I just don't want to take this risk. So that's fine in like one instance, and the next one it's fine, but 100 times over a period of a month, that's insane, and the kid will just grow up protected. You got to take some risk, and my whole idea has been to manage that risk, because life is inherently risky to some degree. What I want to do is I want to take the insane risk, the drunk driving, the becoming a drug addict, getting somebody pregnant. I want to take those risks off the table, getting yourself seriously harmed. The little stuff, skinny dipping in the wrong pool, getting arrested for, some stupid little vandal, silly stuff that everybody will forgive because you're young. That's fine. You can't deprive them of learning from their own experience. And that's what these parents tend to do. And, we see kids. I know personally kids. I could tell you stories. I don't even know if are fit for, YouTube, about overparenting to a degree where kids are just left crippled. They have no ability to deal with life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're right. We cannot deprive them of having experiences that are going to be highly beneficial forever. I like that a lot. Yeah. I for lack of a better term, as I was trying to figure out my parenting style, at some point I called it controlled chaos. To others, it might appear chaotic, and it might appear that, like, for instance, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
One day, something that I would, and a lot of these ideas come from what I would have liked to have my dad done with me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so, I was, well, let me tell you what I did, and then maybe we'll catch up with the other stuff. But
Yeah.
So one day I thought, what my children would love? They would love to burn matches and to burn different materials. When I was a kid, I used to love to burn plastic. I don't know if you've ever done it, but
Yes,
it drips and it makes a funny noise as it drips, whoop, 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 as it's burning.
Okay.
So I thought, it'd be awesome. I'll teach these guys, safety with matches, right? How to use them, how not to use them. And at the same time, I'll reminisce. They'll learn something. We'll have fun. So I gave each one, because I have two boys, I gave each one a book of matches. And I'm like, let's go outside and let's go burn some things. Right?
Yeah.
So I bet you there's a million, I think almost any mom watching this part, right, listening to this, it's cringing.
Yeah.
Right. And forget grandmas. Grandmas would be like, they would, their heads must be exploding right now as they listen. Yeah.
Would you have done this with daughters?
I hope so. I hope, so
that's good. Yeah.
I hope so. I think I'm pretty 100% sure that I would have, because again, my philosophy is, here's where it comes from. I felt underexposed as a child because I spent a lot of time alone. So I didn't have a lot of adults teaching me things. And that's how I see these guys. I'm like, you know what? I'm that adult now. I now get to do it differently. And maybe I've overexposed them to a lot of stuff, definitely probably, but I rather that than underexpose.
Yeah. Because on that note, like you do it with matches. I've done this with like alcohol, because alcohol is one of those things where I see so many kids, they're overprotected until they're 18, and then they go to college and they have no way to control it. They make bad decisions. They get fat in the first year from eating wrong, drinking, partying. They have no idea what to do. So I've always almost used this sort of reverse psychology with alcohol. I like when my kids are 9 or 10, I give them a taste of like red wine. This is what it tastes like. Yeah. And they would rather not taste it because it tastes disgusting to them. So I've already sort of told them, this is something I want to give you, but you're not going to want it. So that stays pretty much until they're 14, 15, even 16. They do not like it at all. By the time they turn like 15 or 16, the whole world changes. They start maybe becoming interested in beer, and then they'll take a little bit of a sip, But the thing is that, so like this, I'm pretty sure this happened with one of my sons. He was going to a party and the kids were like, we got this alcohol. And I was like, I don't want to go. I have alcohol here if I want to. This is no excitement to me. So at least in that instance, I managed to take the excitement part out of it. So whatever he does with alcohol is going to be controlled and not on somebody else's terms, not in some stranger's house, not in some vulnerable state. It's going to be as safe as alcohol consumption is for adults, which is, a bit risky, of course. But so that's the idea.
Yeah. I think it's a fantastic idea. It's a bonding opportunity. You're bonding with your child.
Yes.
So my children grew up seeing me drink. They did not grow up seeing me smoke cigarettes, because I quit on purpose. Wow. I never wanted to have to say to my children, don't smoke, even though I smoke. I just couldn't do it. I don't know, whatever. I couldn't do it. But something that I have always enjoyed is a beer or a glass of wine. So very early on, when they started, I never said anything until they asked. So they would ask. Eventually, someone, maybe the oldest, would say, "Hey, why do you drink?" It's a good question. And I said, because I like to. It makes me feel high. It changes the way that my perception of reality at that moment, which is known as a high, and that's why I drink it. And then I would say, are you want to taste it? Of course, I would say yes, because they're in the safety of my, and under me, wherein like I give them that safety, and then they would taste it. Of course, beer tastes horrendous when you're like, I don't know, 8, 10 years old.
It does,
and then what happened eventually was, they themselves policed themselves, and they would say things like, Dad, when I turn 21, I want us to have a beer together. And I'm like, Absolutely, man. That'll be awesome. I'd love to do that. So now we're, there's a countdown,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
14 to 21 until we can drink together.
That's cool. That's, my, like, I never smoked or anything, but my son, who is now 23, he's been buying me cigars just because he wants that sort of bonding thing too. So
Right.
it's good, as long as it's in moderation and you control it, it doesn't control you. That's the whole idea,
That's a very good point. And I think that what comes out of a great conversation like let's talk about why I drink, how much I drink, is that it takes a lot of what is it, like children have like ideas, or what is mystery. It takes a lot of mystery out of what's happening, and
Yes.
they're watching you model pretty solid behavior, not getting trashed is one of it, right? Like, meaning that if you drink, you don't have to go to that extent where you're slurring words and acting like an idiot. And so but if you're not having the conversations with them, they're kind of wondering what is going on. They really don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I think parents control to a large degree what the kids are fascinated about,
Yeah.
And that can't be alcohol, that can't be drugs, can't be smoking, can't be sex, you have to sort of remove that fascination, and that's, just, this is just a normal thing. You have to learn how to deal with it. It has its upsides and downsides, and, but it can't be like, if you can't, the minute you say there's this thing you can't do, that's going to be on their mind for the next week,
Well,
they're going to try to figure out a way how to do it.
Right. Well, because you're wondering, why can't I do it? Right. I mean, and we don't have to be psychologists. It's just super simple. All we have to do is go back to when we were children. If our parents told us that we couldn't do it, it must have been fun, right? There must be a good reason why we're not being allowed to do it. So let's try it. Let's find out. And the surest way to eliminate that, from a child or from anyone else is just, let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you what,
Yeah. Also, like, if you put yourself in their shoes,
Mm.
they will literally gain like social benefits or social status from challenging their parents. I did this, my parents didn't want to. I mean, that's a huge thing. That's kind of part of growing up. You have to at some point go, parents, I'm done. I disagree with this. I'm going to do this, and you can punish me if you want, but I'm going to do this. So you have to sort of break that authority at some point when you're 17, 18, 19. So you want to make sure that's not about those sort of harsh issues like drinking and stuff. It's about something else, some other silly thing, So you have to make sure it's not fascinating. That's very, very key,
Right,
I find.
right. Yeah, you gave me a visual as you were speaking about, when they're really little, we have to control everything, right? So I think if you were to look at a graph, right, and what an XY, when they're really little, you have to control everything. They're babies. They need everything controlled. But then that has to change over time. And I think that in terms of a philosophy, as a way of, how do you know what to do correctly, is, well, have conversations with them and try to figure out if you can give away some of that control so that they have control over themselves. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, eventually, very, very soon, you're talking about 17, etc., around that time, they want total control. And if you've done a good job after 17 years, I think that's it. I mean, what are you going to do? How much longer are you going to be, in the back seat, making sure that they don't do things that
That's true. I mean, it's as I told you before, when we had our pre-conversation, I'm writing a book about sort of my experiences, and it's based on this whole idea of like basically separating what you can do from what you can't do. So it's all based on trusting your kids, obviously to the age appropriate thing. So my whole idea, you were tracking the kids from being young and needing you until they become old and independent, and that same sort of pathway goes to trust. Like when your kids are 5 years old, you can trust them. They can't lie to you. They're pathetic liars. You just like, you're lying, and they'll just cave right away. Guilt and all this stuff, they can't handle it. Once they turn like 11 or 12, they start getting surprisingly good at it. And that's the age when you really have to watch out that you don't motivate them to lie to you. You will be lied to a little bit. You have to understand that. So your goal is just to like create an environment, set of rules where they don't have to. And then you can maintain that trust throughout. And then they get to drink a little bit. but they're not going to drive drunk. You know, they're
Right.
not going to make the most stupid decision. They can have a lot of freedom. They can be a little silly, but never reckless. That's the line you toe. If that happens, then all the freedom goes back. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I see it. And it's unless your kids are really just bad seeds, that's really the ideal way. It's the simplest for you, less stress, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but so, and I just want to be cautious with that, with the idea of a bad seed, because I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, unless there is some cognitive issue,
Yeah.
then the child is exactly the way that you are and your wife.
Yes. I mean, I'm using the term obviously without really knowing or understanding whether it's genetic or upbringing. I mean, there are bad people in the world. We know that there's serial killers, or some people are just born strange, whether it's
Yeah,
a disease or whatever happened. There are,
that's true.
I'm basically pointing out that you can do this with like 98% of kids,
Okay,
probably.
I like
There's
that.
that small percentage that it's not going to
Yeah,
work, because
yeah.
they are, whatever they are,
I'm
you
with you.
know. So
I'm with you
yeah,
100%. And what I like about the conversation, which I haven't had until now, which is interesting, is about lying. Um, it Lying for when my 14-year-old lies to me, I'm not, it doesn't ruin my life. It doesn't ruin our relationship. Children will lie as much as, I mean, to as part of their attempt at controlling their environment. So so
yeah,
so so and I mean, and at their age, at 13 and 14, these are not big lies. No, none of them are lying.
no,
None of what they're omitting, or they're silly lies, like, did you brush your teeth? Yes. And I'm like, no, you didn't.
yeah,
Right. But and
it's
it's
yeah,
okay. It's okay. And if I say, all right, fine, I trust you, then that's okay too. It's part of the
yeah.
experience. We don't always tell the truth. And we, in fact,
No, that's
we
true. Yeah,
yeah, no, I mean, as much as I like to say that I've always been honest and truthful with my children, I'm sure there's things like it's the way in which is package the information that maybe
yeah.
maybe that's when it's considered a white lie. This is just beneficial.
I actually go one step further because I thought it might work, because I thought it might have worked for me when I was a kid. And you said, that's your starting experience. Well, I would have liked when I was a kid, teenagers to be completely trusted. I was almost, but there was always this little thread they wanted to, just in case you want to be able to pull you back. So I literally, anytime anybody starts lying, or I think it's a lie, I will not tolerate it. I will say that's a lie, and I know it, and you know it. I don't know the specific lie, and I'm not going to spend my time investigating the lie, but I know you're lying, and you've just started degrading our relationship and the trust I have in you. Do you want that? And to avoid this kind of conversation, I try at all costs to set up, like, what do kids lie about? They lie about these sort of little things. I want to, do this with my friends. I want to go to the movies. I want to go to the city, and I let them do it. In return, I just demand that they're responsible, age appropriate, obviously.
Yeah.
And that eliminates those conversations, because the white lies can take on like a darker shade gradually. And I don't want to have the conversation with the kids where they go, oh, I'm going to the movies, and I know they're going to a party, and I say, okay, enjoy the movies. I know they're going to a party. They're lying to me.
Yeah, yeah,
I know that they're lying to me. I'm not
yeah.
challenging them on this. So where's our relationship going from there
Yeah,
on? This is
yeah,
going to shit,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I will not have that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. And
yeah,
you're right. And so the kinds of lies that that my kids tell me is, for instance, we have limits on time on electronics, right?
yeah,
And it's like, all right, that like, and when I'll walk into the room when they're not supposed to be on a device, and
yeah.
it's like, dude, were you on the device? And they're like, no, but they were. And so there's some annoyance, but I'm not gonna yell at them or reprimand, like,
No,
but I like what you're saying, which is if the lie has potential for great danger, then I
yeah,
have to take that seriously, right? If they're saying that they're going to the movies instead, they're going to be going somewhere else. How can I protect them? And I want
the
to do
thing
it.
is that because I'm I'm maybe a more extreme person than you in those sort of regards. Like with electronics and stuff like that, I just control it. I'm good with technology. I'll disable the phones. I'll disable the service. I'll take off the router. I'll disable that computer from the router if I need to, because I would rather go into the room and say to them, I know you're using this. This is outside of what I asked, but I'm not doing anything about it. You have to always be on the forefront. Like, I know I'm cutting you the slack. You're not getting away with it. I'm cutting you the slack.
Yeah.
So then you can be relaxed about it. But the minute that they start, the game changes so quickly once they're motivated to lie to you about stuff. And I won't go there. I will always call them on it. I'll say, I don't know the specifics, but this is a lie. And you really want this on record, because there shouldn't be any consequence to the truth. That's always the thing. What if you come to me with the truth? You shouldn't be doing anything so stupid or irresponsible that I'm gonna stop you from doing it.
Yeah.
So there's this dance of sort of finding that fine balance, which I guess every parent strives for, but
Right. I like that, finding a balance. But I very much like what you said, because you said something along the lines of lying erodes the
your
relationship.
relationship. Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's a point, like if you have a really bad relationship with your kids, there becomes a point at which there's a gap between you, and it's so big that whatever you say to them will have no influence on them. It doesn't do anything. So you got to work on the relationship first, and then when that gets closer, you can start talking to them. Until then, it's pointless. They'll just ignore you, because they've abandoned the idea that you're relevant in their life. They're just waiting to get out of the house, counting down the days. That's it.
I have had conversations where the lie was egregious enough that I exactly used that, the wording, eroding. I said your lie is I forget it. It's something like your lie is ruining our relationship, and that's a bad thing. Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I don't hover over them with homework, because that's the area where they're most tempted to lie. Once my son lied about it, and I said to him, listen, I can't catch your lie now, but I'll pretty much catch the summary of your lies by the time your grade shows up. I can pretty much infer from that what you've been doing. So I'm going to be lazy and we'll deal with it then. So, but you as a parent, you got to stop blaming or taking a battle with your kid. You go, can I do something to break the ice? Can I look at your homework? Can I help? Is there something I can do? Yeah. What is the problem? I'm going to just be of help and not of any burden or any sort of judgment. Let me just help you. If that's not wanted, then just do what you want. I'm just offering my time here in any way that would serve you best. And if you do that as a parent, I would go, whoa, this sounds good. A guilt-free advice. I could just use my parent as a resource and a tool, and none of the bad, naggy stuff that parents do. That's what I would have wanted when I was a kid,
Yeah. That's an important point. If your child is having to lie about, and let's talk about that specific example about the homework. Homework can be difficult, challenging, and it's often boring. To most kids, I think there's a small percentage of the population that enjoys doing homework, but I think most people are like
it's like this big. I mean, the other thing, the brutal truth is that a lot of this homework is bullshit. It's not necessary. So sometimes I'm telling my kids, if they're doing some mindless stuff that they're good at, don't do this. Just go to bed. Screw the teacher. I don't know. This is more important that you get the rest and you manage your life than filling in some blanks and some X's and O's and some piece of paper. It's not going to change anything in your life. So, make your own decisions.
Yeah.
Live or die with them. It's like everybody knows if you skip, this homework, it's going to have no influence on the rest of your life. Absolutely none. So you got to keep that in perspective.
Yeah.
As well, not that you want to slack on homework, but you can't overdo it.
Yeah, perspective is a big word. It's a really, really big, tough word. Putting things into perspective for a lot of parents is really, really hard, especially parents that maybe they're all overwhelmed with life in general, and they're not being able to put things into perspective, and they need their children to just be so very rigidly within whatever lines that the parent feels comfortable, and that hurts the relationship, and it hurts the child that that the parent cannot get there.
It's sort of that's a tough one. I mean, because a lot of parents, both are working long
Yeah.
hours and all this stuff. And, you know, like I've been lucky. I freelance. I do a lot of my work at home or control my hours when I have to travel. And I couldn't have done this with a 9 to 5 job at some corporation downtown. There's no way. So that's a huge privilege, you know, to have
Yeah.
had that. I don't know how parents do it. That's, you know, you just got to find a way to really
Yeah.
communicate with your kids that, and you don't patronize them. That's what,
Yeah.
that's what all these, I mean, I go into this thing in my book about like all these little things that we sort of pretend they're stupid, you know?
Yeah.
Don't do that. You know, just treat them like you're not going to talk to them about like, you know, the interest on your APR on your loan or stuff like that's above their pay grade.
Yeah.
But you can talk to them like, you know, well, I'm not going to buy a new car. We're going to have to buy other things, you know, just to the degree that they're interested. So
Yeah.
they shouldn't feel like they live in some parallel universe to you. They should live in the same world. They should be connected to it to a degree that their age dictates, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then they'll understand, listen, I'm that tired. I have to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
But let's, you know, if I nap for an hour,
Yeah.
maybe we can do something fun. Then you have to sort of, you can't just turn it down. You have to manage the expectation. It could be, let's go for ice cream on the weekend.
Yeah.
They just want something. They just want to talk to you or communicate
Yeah.
to you. And you're exhausted. You have to do takeout dinner, and then you just want to crash in front of the TV or something like that. You just, you know, so you have to get them to sort of at least, you know, not understand you don't have time to parent, but they have to empathize that you have a life as well. And especially when the kids are like under 5,
Yeah.
life is brutal, you know, as far as time. There's no time. If you have any child under 5, you're just like treading water. You can barely breathe, you know. That's my experience, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Patronizing. I have been, you know, mean to my kids on many occasions. But
Yeah.
what I became good at very, very early on, and what I was good at before I had children was apologizing for mistakes. So, but yeah, definitely don't. Yeah, it's the same thing as with anybody else. If you would not like someone talking to you that way, don't talk to them that way.
Exactly. I have a, you know, don't have a good example from my own parenting, but I had an illuminating example from my childhood where I sort of like, I couldn't understand why adults were patronizing kids this way. And it was a police officer came to our school, and he pretty much had one mission. It was try to get, we had a sort of a rather big traffic road next to our school, and he was trying to get the kids to stop walking diagonally across the street, walk straight, and he kept arguing, it's shorter, you know. Now all of us know, no, it's not shorter. Why do you think we're doing it?
Right.
And rather than just going, listen, I know it's longer. I'm a lazy ass too. I would do this all day if I was a kid.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you spend less time on the road, you're less likely to be hit. It's not a big chance. But are you really that lazy that you want to take that chance?
Yeah.
If that was his pitch, then half the kids would go, maybe. And it might have changed like a fourth of their behavior. But after this patronizing bullshit he gave us, nobody changed the behavior and nobody respected him. And people thought adults just talk shit. So that's why patronizing is so bad, because it just, your relationship goes from here to like here. You're of no worth to me. You're just spouting bullshit that's meaningless, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So it's
that's
foolish.
how I see it.
It's foolish for an adult to think that that, you know, teens, you know, or kids, you know, 12, 14, 16-year-old kids cannot call bullshit on what
I know. Yes.
what you're saying. It's foolish. I understand some adult. I think it's a little bit of a laziness. I think it's laziness on the adult's part. Like, you know, let me.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right.
It isn't. The key thing is that what the adult, like the police officer in that instance, failed to do was just think of himself in the other shoes. Think of him as an 8-year-old kid. If this was told to him, he would go, this is horseshit, you know? So let me find some other way. So that's the laziness. Just imagine the world from the child's perspective and their motivations and what the world looks like. Take a few seconds, and that might change a lot in how you approach these things, you know?
Yeah. I think that the parent at that moment, if I went, instead of the police officer, if a parent was attempting to you know, this approach with their child, what I'm seeing as the biggest issue is, you know, what's the long-term concern here, right? What are you doing to your relationship
Yeah.
5-10 years out? If you're willing to be so lazy, right, that you're willing to
Yeah.
lie so that the child aligns with this idea of yours, whereas but it's lazy for another reason. You're wasting an opportunity to spend time with your child.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean, what child doesn't want? I mean, if you ask, like, what is the one thing that a child wants? You can say trip to Disneyland, hang out with the Kardashians, box of chocolate. No, it's not that. It's getting attention
Yep.
from
Yeah.
their parent.
Yeah.
There's nothing more precious than that. And if you truly give it to them on their terms, you can get anything, almost anything in return. So you have to sort of, don't forget that, you're like the number one, at least when they're 5-10 years old. That changes a little bit as they become teenagers, but you have all the power in the world to just give them attention and solve almost anything.
Respect them as unique individuals who
Yes.
and recognize that these little ones want to have control of their own lives. Give them the tools to have amazing control of their lives. As we were saying earlier, help them understand how alcohol works at the age appropriate, as you were saying, or the idea with the matches is like, think about. Maybe this is it. Maybe what I would like collectively that we did would be to plan ahead, to think, like you said, first, let's spend time with your kids, like, and if your life is crazy busy and you have way too many kids, you can right, which could be one. It could be one.
Yeah,
it could
absolutely.
be one. One could be just like overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I was something that I'd like to tell that I'd like to do, something that I believe in, is a calendar. I love calendars, and maybe I'm a real square because I love calendars, but calendars make it so that the next time that someone says to you, hey Thor, when was the last time that you had a real, like a great intimate conversation with with daughter X, and you go, let me think. It's like the moment that you say that, it's like, oh buddy, you're not spending time with your kids. So that's why I love the calendar, because all your 5 kids are in the calendar for conversations with dad.
Yeah, that's true. Like, well, it's difficult. Like in my family, once the kids are out, it'll be weeks I don't hear from them, because somehow, like, these phone conversations just they're not effective for us to, we just will make up for when we're in person. But when the kids are in the house, this is what you're talking about, is that calendar to me is like dinner time.
Yeah,
because we always make sure we eat together, and that's the time we talk. Maybe only 20 minutes, but everybody says something, or you catch up on, and that's the really time. It could be even 10 minutes, but you have to have some decent quality food, something you put love into preparing. So everybody comes to the dinner with some joy and some expectations of a good time. Then you talk like, how are you doing? And people bring up things, and that's so important, especially in life, that everybody scatters after dinner is done. But at least you had that 15 minutes of truly connecting about these things. And then, of course, if the kids are gone, you try to keep in touch. But I suck at the phone and FaceTime stuff. It's just like you do a minute, and then we're like, this is kind of boring. So, we just like, have a meal and drink when you get back, but everybody does it different,
Everybody does. But here's something that I'd like to add here. For instance, if dinner is the only time that you get to spend time together, what there's a key word that I'd like to throw in here, and it's reflective listening, right? Because too many of us, and I know that I'm guilty of like this writing reflex, right? Meaning I want to make everything right. Like my child will say something to me, and immediately I'm like, well, let me tell you how to fix it. Let me tell you how it's done, right? Let me fix it for you right now. And then what happens when you do that is the child doesn't get to express themselves. They don't get to really share and explore, and they don't feel listened to. So if you practice reflective listening, you'll basically, you're just saying, oh Thor, you're telling me that you like having dinner with your children, and you'll be like, yeah, that's what I just said, and you feel listened to. So I think that a good idea here for everybody is to try to figure out how you can make sure that your children feel listened to.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. But like, to me, the key in executing that is like the kid come to you with something that is like incredibly boring to you, like, you know, that they
That's it.
defeated some monster in a game. You're like, I don't want to hear
Oh
this.
my God.
But what you do, you have to just, and yeah, this is technically patronizing, but you just listen and let them speak. Because if you give them a minute, what's the most important thing in the world is your attention. You gave them a minute of it. And after that, sometimes the conversation keeps going, and it, you know, you go to topics that are like, wow, we really need to talk about this, or you're telling me stuff now I never knew was inside your head. So it's a gateway to like a much deeper conversation. So you just sit there and wait. So that's why I totally agree. Reflective listening is really important, because it leads to a whole world of communication that you might otherwise never have had, you know.
I'm going through I'm going through something now that I look forward to finding out how I did in the future. My oldest, when we're driving somewhere, and we do it quite often. I take him. I don't know. We're always going. Like on the weekends, we always go somewhere, and he likes to you know, while in the drive, tell me everything about all of his gaming. Everything. It's just like, you know, a data dump. You know, he's just gonna he wants to go through the entire. And I'm just like, okay, and I just listen. And from time to time, I'll ask for clarification on an idea. But what I find fortunate is that I don't know anything enough about the games, so I can't really opine. And so it forces me to just listen. And I look forward to, you know, like 6 years from now or 10 years from now, and say, hey, remember those car rides where you would tell me everything about your gaming? Did that work? Did I do it correctly? Right? Like, I hope so.
I mean, it's surprising what the kids will remember and what they were like. I don't remember that at all. You know, you never know. That's the fascinating thing about memory. You know, you don't. But you know, it can sometimes be tricky when they're just like data dumping, like you're saying, and that happened, especially with gameplay and boys. You know, but then you can ask a question that's like a little bit reflective, like, what is it about games that's so interesting? Because I'm sitting here, I'm the adult, and you know, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm very interested in your passion about it, but I don't understand it. Like, you don't understand me smoking cigars or drinking red wine. I don't understand your gaming. Explain to me what's fascinating. And that's a whole nother conversation. So you can sort of find the creative way to engage, you know, and without being just a data dump, like you say.
So, the keyword to remember might very well be engage, right? That if you could tattoo anything on your forearm so that you remember, what you have to do is engage, right?
Engage, yes.
And engage means listening, right? Like, ask and listen. You know, appear to be, or attempt to be interested, attempt to recognize that this is quite valuable to them. Just because it doesn't mean right. If it doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything to you, but you understand how it feels when something does mean something to you, and you do want to say it to somebody. It's the same thing. And kids, you know, like you know, we have to be there, you know, present and active with our kids, and you know, they're not going to be there. They're not going to be children for too long. They're children for a much smaller period of time than they are adults. But the relationship that you build from 0 to 15, 20 is you know, should give you a good idea of what the next 60 years are going to be like.
The most common thing I ever hear from like older people, when the common thing about parenting isn't like, oh, you shouldn't do this. It's like, it goes by quickly. Enjoy it. You know, it always goes. You're like, what do you mean? It's like, it's been a long day. You know, it goes by quickly, and then all of a sudden you go, wow. I mean, my oldest is 28. It flew by. You know, so
wow.
Enjoy it while you can. You know,
how different is it having it being a dad to daughters and to boys?
I'm not convinced they share much of the DNA. You know, it's that different. You know, it's I've had 3 girls and 2 sons, and that's not a good sample size. But you know, I've noticed that, like schooling, I never had any issues with girls. I never need to check on homework, nothing. It was just on autopilot. As far as behavior, challenging like authority, never. Just, you know, Boys, completely different, you know.
Wow.
So so like, you know, there are obviously, it's a spectrum, and my case may have been extreme, but I think that, you know, there's just something very different about the way boys respond to authority. Like when my boys were like about 11, 12, both of them got this idea, I'm going to try to say no, you know, I'm just going to try it. Just say no, like about something. You know, your computer's going to go, no, you know, and it's like, okay, where did this idea come from? You know, I mean, I was ready for it, but, you know, it's still like, how, you're 11. How did this even pop into your head? I
Yeah.
control your money. I control your room. I control your internet. I control your phone. I control the router. I control all these things. What do you think you're going to do? You know? So, I mean, especially with my older son, there were a lot of battles. There were periods of like 10 days where he didn't speak to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't like bad. It wasn't like hostile, but it's just like, I'm not talking to you. I've done something or disciplined in a certain way, usually taking away his Xbox, stuff like that, because he didn't obey, didn't do stuff. So I was like, I got to take it away. I got to be consistent. And he would, you know, he would just not have it. There was a big sort of alpha male thing. And now, you know, he's 23 and he goes, oh, Dad, all those stupid things we thought about, I have no idea why that was, you know, kind of admitting that I was right. And we just kind of laugh about it now. We can't even remember most of the things. They were just sort of silly, but my boys have done that and my girls never have. So I think as much as it can sort of be on a broader spectrum than in my experience, I think you should be ready for boys being completely different beasts than girls.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's, you know, so
Yeah.
That's my take on it, at least.
You know, a thought came to mind about the, you know, this idea about you know, preparing them, you know, and I'll ask you about the sex talk, and if you had it and what that was like. But one of the going back to the idea of the matches and the alcohol, something that I've talked about my boys for a long time is I've normalized sexuality, right? I've normalized, you know, men and women. I've normalized, you know, penises and vaginas. I've normalized all of it. Because I think that's important as normalizing, you know, alcohol and other behaviors. So for a long time, they've been aware of, you know, we've had conversations around sexuality. So now that they're 13 and 14, this summer, they're planning a trip on their own. They're going to be going somewhere with family. And so as I was thinking ahead, I say
you're framing this around a sex discussion. I'm curious.
so I say to the one, I say, you know, I took him for haircuts the other day, and I said to one was getting a haircut, and I'm in the car talking to the other one, and I go, hey, by the way, I'm going to send you on this trip with a couple of rubbers, you know, just so you have them, so you're, you know, so you're ready. And he goes, Dad, take it easy. He goes, I'm not there. I like girls and everything, but that's not where I'm at. I don't need it. I was, and I thought, wow, that's so cool. That was like such a cool moment where I'm like, I'm trying to plan ahead and to, you know, like, you know, I'd imagine that he's excited to be with a girl, and here he is like, no, you know, slow down, Dad. Which is a cool.
That's awesome. I think that with sex, I think that's more of a spectrum than anything else. I cannot talk to my kids about sex. I can talk to them about it. They will not listen. It's just like, you know, I mean, I had the same conversation with my son. He was like 19 or 20, and he was traveling to Iceland. And I said, you should buy some condoms here because they're so expensive in Iceland. He's like, Dad, not cool, you know? So I've never had that success. And if ever I tried to talk about it, it wouldn't go. I mean, I was also working and away from the home more and stuff like that. So, but I think that's it's fantastic that you can do it. But I think there's always things about sex that they will not come clean to you. That's the area I've sort of accepted. I will not be able to have that. We can talk about sex in general, but not specifically. You know, we can have a lot of conversations about genders and sex, all these things, but not specifically their sex life. That's just, I've never been able to go there. I've been fortunate that there have been people in their lives, you know, like teachers and, you know, people like that have educated them well. And but it's just that's the most I wouldn't say it's the most difficult, but that's the area where this is the last frontier, let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm curious. Ask your son when you ask them about that other thing when they grow old, like data dumping in the car. Ask them like, do you really tell me everything about sex?
Yeah.
I would mention they didn't quite, but I mean, it's unrealistic, I think, to completely have that sort of relationship with your parent. It's that sort of part of it. I mean, I don't know if it's biology or something, but you're like I mean, I don't know, when like parents are like holding hands or kissing like in front of the kids, they sort of tolerate that. Anything beyond that, they go, it's kind of ooh.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent and dating somebody, this is not from my experience personally, but there's like a girlfriend of a dad, and there's any sign of affection, kids just immediately go gross,
Yeah.
So there's some sensibility there that I think you have to respect. I mean, if you can communicate with them, that's great. But I think there's huge barriers there. Kids have a very specific view on like communicating with adults, and especially their parents, about sexual activity and sexual behavior. It's kind of strange, so good for you.
No. The sex conversation is a really tough conversation to have. I know what you mean, and I know that a lot of people struggle with it. But it'll, for me, where it came from is, once I became aware of how many children are abused, and that like 95%, or more know the perpetrator, that's when I just had to, as soon as possible, talk to my children about it. And that's why I bring it up as often as I possibly can in conversations. Like,
well, that's a different conversation than like about like their sex. That means like, that's a conversation like somebody does something to you got to speak up.
Yeah.
But that's why I've always wanted to be. I'm not the guy who's going to nag you about stupid stuff, but something really goes wrong, you got to be able to come to me. If you can't come to me, I fucked up. Yeah. I got to do something better. I got to be that last insurance. Yeah. If something like this is, you have questions about somebody's behavior, who else is gonna step in but a parent? So that's why it's so important not to ruin that trust with some stupid little shit. No, you can't, go to the movies. You can't, like, you ruin it, because then you're not going to be listened to when you truly need it.
Yeah.
So that I understand. I've been able to have those sort of conversations, but not like, do you have a boyfriend? Are you having sex? It's like, that's not really happening in my household,
Yeah.
So, and I don't think I've needed to, because I've fortunately sort of, I've trusted their judgment. I go like, they're good enough with everything else. Like, I don't have to specifically, but if that wasn't the case and I hadn't been so lucky, I might have had to have some more awkward conversations with them about that,
Yeah. How, it appears that you've enjoyed being a dad. Has it been a positive experience?
Yeah, it has really sort of like quietly been just I mean, I when I came to America, because I'm from Iceland, I came here to like start like working in music, and that was all my attention. And I quickly became a dad, and we had like kids early, and I was sort of like, I really enjoyed the kids, but I always thought like my career is gonna be my thing, and it really kind of just completely changed. Once I was working with a couple of audio guys, and he said, what you look like when your kids come visit? And I go like, what? You're a different person. And I'm like, really? And I think at that point I realized just that I don't know, the word privilege gets thrown around a lot these days cheaply, but that's just, there's no words to describe it. I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
No words.
Yeah. I've said a couple of times, I'm that guy who, because of the way that I grew up and my personal experience as a child, I had decided that I was never going to get married. And of course I was never going to have children, because I was not, because that's how I understood it: marriage, children. Yeah. And then then I met a woman that I didn't want to be without. And then she's like, well, if we're doing this, we have to have kids. And I was like, oh man. And of course I had never, I had never fantasized about being a dad. I had never, it was just thought that, so I got married at, I was like 29, and for 29 years, I never thought of what it might have been, but what being a dad was like. I never had that conversation. Oh, it's going to be so much fun, or it's going to be whatever. Like, no, I was never going to have them. So, but it's just so weird, once the first one was born, for me, it was like, like super simple. It was almost like, it just, the field of view just narrowed. It just like, it sent like a laser beam focus on this one little guy. Like, for me, it was like I understood immediately. It was just really weird that I understood, and maybe because I understood how uncomfortable it had, my childhood had been, how I just alone I felt. Maybe that's why, I'm only now sort of like at this moment trying to understand how was it that I was able to just like zero in on this child, but that's what I did. For me, it was like, and I've loved it. I've loved it. I've had no problems, with being a dad.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I think you're right. Like, men, I mean, if you marry a girl like close to your age, I think the women just start thinking about it sooner. Like, all my guy friends, like, I'm not ready. Like, well, we're pregnant now. Like, what do I do? And it's like, and then they're great dads. It's just, it takes them a couple of years to adjust to it. So
yeah,
it's weird that way.
Yeah. So what are some of the chapters, some of the more exciting chapters that you're writing in your book about?
Well, it's I've never written anything, and so I decided just to like just write kind of the way I wanted. Obviously, it's been a process, and I thought I would need somebody to write it for me. But I talked to an author friend of mine, a really good friend of mine. He said, "You can do it, but you have to do it 5 times." And I was like, I'll do that. I mean, it's been like probably 12 now, but it's finally, finally sort of legible, and because I was a pretty bad writer, but it's basically it's kind of how to explain it. It's a short book and then a long book. The first book is really just deals with driving, sex, drugs, schooling, that sort of stuff. Just like a quick thing, and like how I've done it, or stories from my life, And then the actual sort of book begins. The book, I build sort of on this idea of trust, and it's like what I've tried to do in building it. Some of the things we've touched upon, and like how you start when the kids are young and into that stuff, and then I weave it in with personal stories. So there's lots of just really bizarre stories of interacting with parents. So it's full of just you'd never think that you couldn't write this stuff. You wouldn't believe it if a writer in Hollywood wrote it. There's some stories like there's one section of the F word, for example. and it's basically about talk about not letting other people control your behavior. I noticed when my kids were very young, we went to a household, very wealthy Manhattan household. Kid was a little odd. He's a 3-year-old biking around. Imagine what a big house is. There's like a rotunda inside the place. Kids biking around. There's night lights. It's 10 o'clock at night. And the kid bikes, into the conversation that I'm having with the adults. And he stops, grabs everybody's attention, points to the night lights, and he says, "I know what these lights are for. They are for fucking," That's what the kid said. I have no idea what the kid meant. The parents just turned beet red, like they were so flustered and embarrassed. So I thought to myself, this is probably just something silly and funny. If it had been some of their business associated, they might have been more embarrassed. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to have that happen in my family. So what I did is that was one of the first words I taught them. And I just taught them excessively. And it's not fun to them, some new word, they have no idea what it means. So they would say it for a week or two, and then it would get be the most boring thing in the world. They didn't never say it. So it wore out. And then my older kids started watching as they did to the younger kids, and they would look at me, try to stop me, said, "Dad, you can't be saying this in front of our little brother." And I said, "I did this to you And I just don't want this to be a word that you are used excessively, because nobody sounds good saying it, even though I've uttered it a couple of times in the podcast. But this shouldn't be a part of your vocabulary as an adult. You shouldn't be shaming your parents. I want to take that weapon, because kids have this ability. You can whine in a store. Parents can't do anything. You can say the F word in company, and you completely have won over your parents. You can get whatever you want to get them to shut up. I do not want to lose that battle. So that's why I did that. It's completely unorthodox. It worked, kind of. I mean, we've never had a problem with it. I don't know if it just my kids weren't interested in it anyway. And then there's a short story in my book about, basically, I'm at a soccer game with my son, and the referees were kids, so they were terrible. And I just moved to this New Jersey suburb. And when you watch soccer in Europe, you kind of, that's a, blah, blah, blah. That's part of the game.
Yeah.
So, but in America, it's just like, kick it. It's like, it's on that level. Right. So I screamed, that was a penalty, and the whole stand is like zoomed in on me, and I'm like, okay, welcome to Montclair,
Yeah.
So that wasn't the thing. First, the coach comes over and tells me, we don't criticize the refs,
Oh, okay.
He didn't mind the F words, like, we don't criticize the refs. And I said, you should have a conversation about how that was a blatant penalty. And he said, we're not. And then I said, well, then you're not a good coach. What are you teaching the kids? Honestly, just go. Or what are we here for? Watching something stupid? That wasn't the thing. After the game is over, a couple comes over to me, the dad holding the hand of his son and his wife standing next to him. And he walks over to me and says, I don't appreciate this language, in front of our children.
Yeah.
His 7-year-old son pulls his hand and literally says, Dad, it's all right. I know what fucking is, and you go like, is the child telling the parent that this word is okay?
Yeah.
There's something like seriously wrong
there,
from being just like,
kid
knows that this is bullshit. It has no meaning. It's just an adult being excited.
Yeah.
But the parent had to say that. So just the F word alone can be a source of so many just awkward, he's probably a great parent, but if the kid is trying to protect the parents from the word, I don't know who's the parent now,
Yeah.
So it's bizarre,
No, this is a very interesting conversation. I mean, it's almost like cursing and the F word are a lot like the sex talk, I think. I remember, so I wanted to demystify curses, right? I wanted to get that out in the open. So one day we're sitting at the dining table one night, and I said to each one of the boys, "It's like, hey, tell me what curses you know." Right?
Oh, that's good.
I said it was adorable, because this was very early. This was several years ago, and they were so excited to be able to tell Dad the curses. And I thought, like, like you were saying, I thought, well, this is going to be the end of it, because, they've said them, they know them, we're good. Well, so where this awesome conversation went south really quick is with video games. The profanity that these guys are yelling at each other is just unbelievable. So I don't know to what extent I'm guilty of the amount of cursing that goes on in these games. It's incredible. And where I have to, open a door, go in and be like, hey, no, take it down. I said, no more F-bombs, for an hour, and then we'll see. But it's just, they apparently don't know how to communicate with each other in any other way.
It's tricky, because I think you have to sort of, it's a little bit of the difference between like your private and your public life. I'm in the car and I curse a lot at people that, that drive 20 miles an hour in a 40-mile zone in front of me. Like, I'm going somewhere, just move out of the way. So I think we do that. And maybe in game playing, I would say, I haven't had that problem so much, but if they were using it, I would just say, listen, when you use that word, you just look stupid. You sound stupid. You sound like you're an idiot. Do you want that? What is this? Find some other words. I'm not going to ban you from using that word. I just think you sound like an idiot when you use them. So then maybe they start thinking about it, and then they hear their friends go, I'm like, and this sort of stuff percolating in their head. I don't know. I think you got to maybe try to, one way around it would be just to change the framing of it.
So
It's hard to
yeah.
stop them from doing that.
Yeah. So I'm not, so okay. Yeah. So well, there's intelligence in their capacity to combine the various curse words together that I appreciate as an art form.
Yeah.
And so but the other problem is the reason I don't smoke, right? I do use profanity in my day-to-day language, not in a toxic bad way, but I use it. I think in my mind it's colorful and useful. But part of it, to be honest with you, and this is an important opportunity at introspection or reflection. I grew up with my mother. My mother never cursed. Wow. So, and I was the only boy that had 3 sisters. So there were 4 women that were older than me that none of them ever cursed. And there was when I finally became self-aware enough that I was not one of them, right? That I was a young man, a boy becoming a man eventually. Yeah. I thought, my feeling was, well, women might not curse, but I certainly see that men do. And that's something that I want to do because I want to be a man.
Yeah.
So, and so, but, and I took it, that's how I seem to understand what I did. And then I normalized it in my conversations. So
I think, I think just people are different. I remember this with, they were like boys when I was like 11, 12, they kind of hit puberty early and started just cursing and just like showing this just like strange sort of pre-sexual kind of behavior. I was playing sports and there was a guy in the locker room. He literally, I think I learned like 50 words for penis in one summer. He just kept uttering them. I was like, and at some point it's like, this is enough. The more you say it, the less respect I have for you as anybody that I want to spend time or listen to. And I mean, there was sometimes reverse psychology can work. I read this book. It's Dave Sedaris. I don't know if you heard of the writer. He's a Jewish, I think New York. No, I don't know where he's from. He writes this book, and anyway, he talks about how he travels through the world and different curses that people use in different countries. Now he translates them to English. And, he takes like, this is what Hungarians say when you cut them off in traffic. And it shows you how absolutely absurd it is.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, just to play the audiobook for your kids. And you go, see how retarded that sounds in another language? This is what you're doing, Find some other way, So you're not going to stop them. You got to sort of encourage them and see it in a different light. It's too powerful a word in our culture to be able to do that,
Yeah, no, and when I've asked, I'm like, and I asked them, aren't your friends getting, annoyed or upset with you using this much profanity? And he goes, Dad, they're using that same amount of profanity. So and I have watched a number of different videos on YouTube from that make fun of.
Actually, I started this game because I really wanted to, even a little bit as teenagers. I started this game with them where we try to make them understand how stupid the word is. Like, so when we have a conversation, I have to say the F word in every conversation, but you try to make it as nice as possible. Okay. Like, rather than saying, could you pass me the salad? You try to say, could you pass me the fucking salad? So it becomes theater of absurdity quickly. Yeah. And that's one more message to the kids, like, this is insane, So I think you just got to wear them out. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, they're not gonna stop it. I would say, like, okay, you can curse, but instead, this is what I'm gonna get. You're gonna make sure you shower every day, clean clothes. I'm gonna get all these things, and I'm gonna let you curse. I don't know. That's what I would try to get something from it, because you can't. It's this idea of trying to change something you can't change. You can slowly nudge and sort of chip away at it. You can't really change it.
I have never heard them curse outside of gaming. They never do. Yeah, but I like your thinking.
Yeah.
I do like that. Maybe I can come up with something to help them recognize that it's not the only way to go, and that there's other ways of communicating, even within a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, if you and I bet money on it, you would probably put $100 down that they're not going to be doing this in 5 years. It's just, it's unlikely. So
Yeah,
maybe it's one of these things you don't have to worry about,
yeah,
as long as you just like everything else is kind of cool. Like we know this is, I'm not going to be nagging you about it. You know, talk stupid with your friends all you want.
yeah.
You
There,
know.
yeah, I think that there's something about that the distance, like they're gaming, but they're not, and they have friends in their ears, and
Yes.
there are these drawings and images on the screen, and because I certainly, I absolutely, I'm confident that if they were playing out on the street, they wouldn't use that kind of profanity. So there's something about
No,
gaming
I don't think so. Yes.
like opens itself. um I wanted to go back to your book, and I wanted to say that bizarre stories, which is a word that you use,
Yeah.
I like, and I think that that's a great hook, because I don't think that I think that advice is like kryptonite for men.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's it's very interesting you bring that up. Like, you said in a prior conversation, nobody wants advice. And I think that's true, even though we can always argue that some people may need it, but they just don't see it that way. Uh, but so I kind of think of this as ideas and
Yeah, yeah,
options.
yeah,
I try very much to say, this is how I did it. And you can try it if you're interested, but you know that's all it is. And I
yeah,
just try to, obviously I support my case with arguments, stuff like that. And I sort of say at some point, somewhat arrogantly, I admit, it's like everybody knows, like with diet and exercise, all of us know what the right thing to do is: eat vegetables, less meat, cut away rice, pasta. We all know, we just can't do it. So I think with parenting, intuitively, we sort of know what the right thing to do. Don't yell at them. Don't be stressed. Give them time. All of us know it. So I try to focus on sort of simple ways. Take away all
yeah,
the unnecessary battles so you can truly listen to your intuition and just be a parent, be a good person.
yeah,
So many parents just feel like, oh my God, I can't let my child do this. My neighbor, my mother, like, let them do
yeah,
it. Have a glass of wine and listen to them, talk about data dump on you for a while or something.
yeah,
Stop bothering about stuff you can't change. So that's sort of my perspective. Is like, I think it's like, that's why I talk a lot about intuition. I think you just got to tune
mm,
into things are right. And most people agree, and this isn't any rocket science. It's sort of a way to remove all the clutter
yeah,
from life. That's I guess the best sort of idea or
yeah,
advice I could give. Not the specific, like, take them skiing every 2 weeks. No,
right.
that you do what you want as a parent. That's a whole nother thing.
Intuition. Yeah, I think I like the idea of intuition. That immediately brought me to the idea of put yourself in their shoes. What would you like your
Yes,
mom or dad do?
absolutely.
What would you like to, I had a conversation with a woman the other day. She was telling me that she's the daughter is 9 years old, and the daughter had come out to mom and said, "Hey mom, I think I like girls."
Wow.
And mom's like, "Oh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I should have done." But mom was what mom was, she was soft, she was caring, and she
Yeah.
she listened. And then mom goes to me, mom says to me, what I didn't tell her was that, that I am also bisexual. That's,
Oh.
right. And the mom says to me, well, what should I do? And I'm like, what would you have liked your mom to have done? Right. um
Yeah.
and the answer, very interestingly, was that this mom told me, that she later went on to say that she knew when she was like 5 years old that she liked girls. Which is interesting, because then if her
Wow.
daughter's 9, if her daughter's anything like her, 4 years ago, she knew that she liked girls. But it's so interesting how, when we become parents, we lose sight
Yeah.
of what's so obvious.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, yeah, I think, like, what would you like to hear as a child?
Yeah.
Just I have no idea. I haven't had a bisexual child that I'm aware of, no. But that shouldn't make any difference. My friends have had, and it's like it. The first question is like, first, it should always be two things equally powerful. Like, I don't care,
Yeah.
and I will do absolutely anything to help you in being who you want to be.
Right.
Those two should be communicated equally strongly. I don't care in the sense that it makes no difference really, like boys, girls, monkeys, or just that makes no. These are preferences you have. I like blue shirts. Are you commenting on it should be that irrelevant what your choice is, but it should be equally strong. Like, I support your choice with all my might. I'll defend you against anybody that doesn't. I will. I have actually. There's a friend of my daughter's. I mean, this is speaking to this thing, and it's kind of like, she is. I'm so bad on the transgender, the gender fluidity spectrum, because I'm just that old. But she is somewhere on the spectrum. She's like a non-binary. Let's say she is, because that's yeah. And she, she can't order, like, they have these specific like bras to sort of flatten your chest. She can't order them with her parents. So my daughter asked me to order for her. So now I get all this junk mail from like these like transgender like bra. It's like, that's insane. If your parent can't support you to that degree, this is another thing. What are parents thinking? Do you think you can control this? Your child can't control this. And you think you just have to love your child with all your heart and support them, like relentlessly fight for them in this battle. And it's like, if you communicate just that, you may make mistakes and say something, but at least they know where you stand. You're on their side, and you're like, but you don't have to know specifics. They just have to know you're on the team, So I don't know. That's, that's, yeah.
Well, so, going back to what we've been saying, if it was you, if you are the 9-year-old, right? If I was the 9-year-old going to my mom and saying, Mom, I like boys. God, I wish that moment, because it's so very confusing. I mean, just being 100% heterosexual is confusing enough.
Yeah,
it's so difficult. It's complex.
True. That's true.
And now the idea that you add to this, bisexuality or homosexuality, and then at 9 that you don't feel comfortable that you can go to dad or you can go to mom and be like, and share that something so fundamentally important. And I mean, sexuality is, I talk about it as often as I can, like I told you, and it's everything. I mean, there isn't anything alive that hasn't had sex to be alive. And so how is it that we're so mysterious about it? How did it become such a difficult, life destroying topic? I mean, I ponder that in the book, because the intro to the sex chapter is basically like, we want to watch love. Love is one of the most fun and sort of romantic things to watch. Like, people fall in love. The minute there's sex, we go, whoa. Yeah.
So I mean, I remember this in college. I lived lived in a big house, save money on rent. And then people started dating and hooking up. I'm like, oh, this is so everybody. And then you hear noise from the bedroom. You go, okay, we have to have, so it's just, love is public and sex is intensely private. I think we have to understand that. And it's going to be awkward. I mean, it is for a reason. These are intimate things and connections that are deeper than you have with almost any other person in your life, like much deeper on so many levels. And sexuality is just one expression of it. It's not the fact that you're having sex with them. It's the fact that you have sex with them, and that opens up other paths of communication with the person. That sex is just a conduit to intimacy. It itself isn't necessarily, but you're at that moment with the person where you just, that makes you the most connected to another person that you'll ever be. So it's a mechanism for a connection, right? That's how I see it. So that's hard to compete with,
going back to you, getting all this spam for purchasing bras. It's very cool that she has you, that you exist, that even maybe it's not her parents, and I will never shame or blame parents that cannot have this conversation.
No,
never, man, never. It's hard, it's difficult, man. I don't know how I came about being so damn open about everything.
Yeah.
I you know what, I maybe because I equate it to authority. I think that like not being able to speak about anything, it's equated to my disdain for authority figures, and I don't know where that came from either.
Yeah.
I hate to be told what not to do. I hate to be told that I cannot do something. And so maybe that's why, I'm so open with my children. But again, going back to you and this girl, or this person, um, thank God that you're there. Then you can, and that you feel comfortable enough,
Well, I
and that
mean, it
she has
was,
someone.
well, the thing is that, and this speaks to the sort of, I don't really care.
Right.
I don't care one way or another.
Yeah.
This is just a little convenience. I mean, yeah, but it's unfortunate that she can't
Yeah.
go through her parents with that. It's like, that's the odd part. I mean, there's the little thing. I could, like I said, I couldn't care less if it was a box of chocolates or condoms, or I'll do that. I've done this with, in respect to like driving, because my kids have most of the time been very handle alcohol very well, because this is like, my kids started drinking right before Uber became popular.
Okay.
So I literally, I made one statement to them when they started drinking. I said to them, if you're ever like somewhere out and you're drunk and need a ride home, you're gonna call me.
Yeah.
And in return, I'll come pick you up anywhere, anytime, no questions, and I'll drive you home. There'll be no consequences for whatever state you're in. I'll drive you and any of your friends home. And it's worked. Now they just take Uber, so you don't need to do that. But I was, when I started doing it, like my daughter was maybe 17 or 18, and I picked her up from this party, and she was drunk, and I'm like, how are you so comfortable with this? You have to trust me when I have to trust you.
Yeah.
So my point with this was like, so yeah, I let my child, a 17-year-old, drink at a party, but what do I get in return? I know where they were partying.
Yeah.
I know who they were partying with. I know that it's a safe environment, and I know how they control their alcohol, and so many other things. And none of this a parent that bears down to harden the kids will ever know. I already know all these things, and I know I can trust them.
Yeah.
They handle this stuff. So, and I've sometimes driven their friends drunk home, and I know that's kind of crossing a line, but I would rather take them home to their safety, where they can deal with the truth and their parents, than not. So, and even like talk about like being yelled at by other parents. On one occasion, parents, like day after I did this with their daughter, they came and yelled at me, not knowing that I had driven their daughter home, like passed out pretty much. They yelled at me for how lax I was about my daughter and how I was a bad influence. And I was dying to tell them what had happened, but it's like, okay, this is, that kid has to just deal with, the environment she is in. It's like, this is unnecessary trouble in my book, because they should just acknowledge, okay, you drunk, you passed out. Let's work on not making this happen. I don't mind you drinking, but you shouldn't be passed out. There's serious danger in that, attack, all sorts of sexual violence. You shouldn't expose yourself to that. I'll buy you the wine, but I don't want you to get violated, when you're passed out. That's a good trade-off for me. I know that's not kosher with everybody, but I'll take the deal any day of the week,
Yeah. Now with this all this conversation around cannabis being legalized, I've had to have this conversation. Well, I haven't had to, but I've immediately, I'm like, okay, this is the next, dinner table conversation.
Next frontier,
So I've had to say, I'm like, look, and I'm not against smoking cannabis. I'm not against, tripping on acid or psilocybin. I'm not against a lot of these things. There's some things that scare me, but that doesn't mean that I'm against them. And I've heard of proponents speak, about heroin and other things like that. But so what I've had to say to my kids is like, look, guys, you're not ready for any of these drugs, but I promise you that the day that you're ready, we're going to do them together, right? We're going to experiment together, because I do not want you to experiment, at a party when you don't know what you're getting. And, maybe you don't feel comfortable at the party enough, and you're going to have a bad trip. And, and I want to, I've taken acid, and I think it's, it's a wonderful experience, and I think that under the right circumstances, so that's what I've had to say to them, and hopefully they'll trust me enough to hold off if they get exposed to it, if a friend brings it up and I'm not around, what I'm hoping is that they'll say, no, I'm good, confident that they're going to do it with me later.
That's all you can do. If I in the preparation for the book, I've asked, parents and teenagers to come across. I go, if a teenager truly wants to do something, what can a parent do to stop them? And the answer is always like, what do you mean? There's nothing they can do. Everybody says that, right? Right up front. So I think you have to accept that. It's interesting you bring up psilocybin, because that's there's a lot of, you're sure you with your work you're aware of how much potential that seems to have with like mental disorder, and actually destigmatizing it, and the fact that we're finally able to do some research on all that stuff. But having said that, I'm surprisingly conservative when it comes to drugs, because I don't know anything about them. The way I sort of see it is that there's obviously a few alcoholics that have come across, but surprisingly few though, actually. So maybe that biases me. But being in music, everybody, especially in the 90s, really smoked pot. And I sort of didn't like how addicting it was. They really needed to smoke every day to be good. But my friends that drank were like, yeah, I can skip a drink. I don't have to do it, So it was that it seemed that even though pot isn't an addicting drug to that same degree, I never liked sort of that attitude, like, oh, I really need to, man, otherwise I can't go through the day. So I tell my kids, listen, I can't control it. I almost never do it. I do it in company. I don't need it. I don't get any high from it. You should try it. You should definitely try it. But I wouldn't be happy if you started doing that regularly. I don't think you need to. There's so many other things. And with the other stuff, I just, I know my kids have tried a couple of things, but they're all relatively safe. And I go, I know nothing about it. I would just stay away from it. If you really want to try something, do it with friends, do it with someone have a backup plan.
Right.
And, so at least you're as insured as you can be in doing that stuff. Yeah. So in that respect, I agree with you.
Yeah. I think, I wonder, I think that a big fear is addiction. A big fear is addiction. I understand that. I'm very, but recently I've started listening to this Dr. Gabor Mate. I think is how you pronounce his name.
Oh, I've seen him. Yeah, I know he's Argentinian. No,
he's European. He's European. I forget what country he was born in, but yeah,
I know. Yes, I've seen the videos. Yeah.
Or I mean, born in like 42 or something like that. So the war was happening, and anyway, and what he is adamant about is that that people who become addicted are attempting to fulfill a need, right? That they're self-medicating because of trauma.
Yeah.
So knowing that and believe, understanding what he's saying or believing it, which makes absolute sense to me based on what I've learned about trauma, and the work that I do in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. It makes sense. So then, so as I have these conversations with my children, where I feel comfortable is they don't have any trauma in their lives. Nothing major that would make it so that they may become, not addicted, but that they be dependent on an escape, on this escape route.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, you know more about this stuff, but I watched one of his lectures, and what really grabbed my attention was the fact that he said, we got to think of it from the drug user's perspective. Yeah. They're obviously getting something out of this. Otherwise they wouldn't be wrecking their lives. So they're getting some pleasure, or we got to think about, well, we got to replace the pleasure. So that's his approach, which I think is paramount. But also, in sort of researching for the book, I was trying to find out where sort of the science was on addiction. And it's like anything in social science is very cloudy and unclear. But there's and you can maybe echo this, there seems to be a lot more focus on like the environment now, and like what your life is like, rather than just genetic. It's obviously a complicated equation. There was a famous experiment that, it's like anything in sociology, it's been hard to replicate lately, but there was this famous experiment called, I think it's called the rat park experiment, something like that. I haven't heard about it. Yeah,
I love it.
So basically it's this, I mean, it's a silly thing where he gave rats a happy life and a control group a sad life, and the happy rats just used a little bit of drugs every day, but the rats with the sad life just overdosed immediately. So I think that's a suggestion that there's a huge social environmental component. And it's like anything, it gets very complicated, but I think that that's a huge part of it. I've sort of seen, like,
that rat park experiment is really great. And let me just repeat what you said. On the one hand, you have an environment, you have rats in an environment where all they have is water or drugs, right? I think it was cocaine or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, or heroin.
So right. So they have an environment where all they have to choose is really boring. There's nothing to do. There's only a couple of rats in there, and you can either drink water or you can get high. So naturally, well, not naturally, what this scientist realized was, well, maybe the reason they're doing drugs is because they're filling a need, and the need is for boredom, or not boredom, but sadness or anxiety from being trapped in this, like a lot of good reasons to do drugs. And on the other one, what he did, he created an environment that was healthy, but there was wheels to hang out in. There were other rats to socialize with. And then he found out that only a small percentage of the rats were actually interested in the drugs.
Yeah, it's like I say, there's been I read some people that were questioning and say it was hard to duplicate, but I think I was listening to a podcast the other day where someone was saying that this experiment had been done in regards to intelligence as well. So they had separated like smart rats from dumb rats.
Okay.
And smart rats that could go through a maze and stuff like that. And then they figured, like, once they created a really fun life, then the difference in intelligence and ability to go through a maze like really equaled out a lot. So that's why we have to give the kids as good and stimulating as environment.
So that's the point of the conversation, right? And you've arrived at the point of the conversation, which is and it goes back to the very beginning of this conversation. Be present, engage with your children, put hanging out or activities in a calendar, right? Make sure that they are in their rat park, in the fun environment where they don't feel anxious or sadness or loneliness, and that they see any of all the drugs that are available today as an option for self-medicating, meaning for making themselves feel better. Absolutely. I think that's what's valuable about this conversation, whether you can replicate the experiment, whether you agree with it or not. I think that what we should at the very least agree on is, if you're growing up in an environment where you feel happy, where you feel safe, where you feel supported by your parents, where there is enough outdoor activity or activities in general, you're very unlikely to want to do the heavy drinking or the smoking or whatever other drugs.
I think you've done everything you can control as a parent, and the rest is stuff you can't really do anything about anyway.
It is true. At the end of the day, I think that something to remember is, we cannot control it all, but we must. From my point of view, is I must attempt to be as aware as possible, which is what I do, right? And which is why I love these conversations with amazing people such as yourself. Because we're having these conversations together. We benefit first and foremost, and whoever chooses to listen will benefit equally.
That's true.
Because I think that's what the biggest problem. I think that the biggest issue with the transition of when women started to join the workforce, right? Because that's when men's lives sort of like, started to change in terms of parenting, fatherhood, right? Because women now were at work, and now them. So I think that the biggest hurdle that we have faced over the last, 30 to 50 years is that we don't really have conversations around this, so we don't really know what the heck is going on. But that's exactly what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Very cool. Thor, listen. So what we should do is once your book is out, then you should write me with a link so that we can throw it up in
Yeah,
the at the
I
bottom.
will. I will.
And
Thanks.
yeah, we'll do that. And try to get some people out there to purchase it. I'm looking forward to it. I like the idea of
Thanks.
the stories, because stories are
Yeah,
everyone
stories are
loves
fun. I know.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the great thing about stories is stories are like that that idea about a picture being worth a thousand words, right? Like
It
a
is.
story
Yeah.
is infinitely number of
That's why
words. Yeah.
basically, like I was a terrible reader. I've never been able to read fiction. For some reason, it just doesn't make sense to me. Somebody else's like world inside their head. Like I have imagination. I can imagine things as well. So I I never read any books. And just this whole thing was I lost my train of thought, but the it was just the whole process of writing has really just it's just been something I never predicted.
Yeah.
I never thought my life would go down this path. I just sat one day out on the porch and just like
Yeah.
talked like 5 hours of stuff with my iPhone, and then realized, okay, maybe I should write a book about this.
What I love for you about the writing process is I tell it, I tell anybody who will listen that journaling is an incredibly amazing thing. And I think
Yeah.
that some of what you appear to be describing is that it's that opportunity um to process and integrate, while having fun, and with
Yeah.
this goal in mind at the end to share with others, and hopefully
That's
help them if
yeah.
they're. Yeah.
That's one of my main. The only thing, that's what I was going to say before. The only thing that I kept in mind when writing was like, this could be a bad book, irrelevant, judgmental, whatever. I don't want it to be boring.
Yeah.
That's like the one thing I don't want to hear. I can hear everything else, but it can't be boring. And I've tried to try to control it sort of. I mean, I write music and I do the stuff, so I know how important it is to keep your attention at
Yeah.
any moment. So I've tried to use that in a book. So like if it gets too analytical, there's got to be something that breaks that thing. So it weaves a lot back and forth. It's like a little bit of sort of theory and philosophy, and then right back to stories that back them up or show them, demonstrating them some sort of context.
Yeah. I love it. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah.
Thor,
Thanks.
I think we should, an hour and 44 minutes. I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. That went by quick. Wow.
It goes by fast. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yes. Appreciate it. Good luck with everything, man.
Thank you. You too. I look forward to reading your book.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.